Today on the Purpose-Based Retirement, we're going to be discussing pensions. Should you be taking that joint pension or that single life pension or the lump sum option? We're also going to be discussing inflation. Later in the show, we're going to talk a little bit about financial media superstars. Should you be listening to Susie Orman? How much of what she has to say is 100% fact? Well, there's a lot of good things she has to say. We're also going to find out that there's some things that you should be watching out for. What is the average age of a retiree? Stick around. You'll find out later in the show.
Welcome to the Purpose-Based Retirement with certified financial planner practitioner Casey Weade.
It's not how much we make during the good times, it's how much we keep during those really bad times.
Casey leads a team of financial advisors with decades of experience, helping families across the country retire with the confidence they deserve. The Purpose-Based Retirement assigns every dollar you've saved a specific purpose to meet a key retirement need.
Whatever risk you faced, we've got a plan for that.
Stay tuned and learn how you can look forward to a worry-free, purpose-based retirement.
Good to see you again. I'm Lee Kelso here with Casey Weade, certified financial planner and the president of Howard Bailey Financial. We're going to jump into the program today talking about something that many of us are facing these days, and that is a pension buyout offer.
Yeah, there's a lot of pension buyout offers that we're seeing out there today, and this is such a major decision for retirees to really make. And it's something that I think a lot of people take for granted. They walk into their financial advisor who says, oh, well, you need to roll that over because I can do better. And that's not always the best decision. It might be a great decision for you. However, I think there's a lot of things for us to consider as we're making that pension decision. This is why I decided that it was time that we put out an article like this.
So let's back up and start from the beginning. Basics here. What is a pension buyout offer?
Well, a pension buyout offer is what we're seeing in a lot of different companies, in Fort Wayne and South Bend and other countries across the state of Indiana and also in North Carolina, where we've got another one of our offices. We're seeing a lot of individuals that are being presented with these options by their employer to say, hey, we don't want to provide you that guaranteed income anymore. Here's a lump sum of dollars where you can take this lump sum and you can walk away with it and do whatever you please. We just don't want to have that obligation to pay you that benefit for the rest of your lives. And people are going, well, why would they ever offer me so much money where they're going to give me a small dollar amount every month for the rest of my lives? And now I have the ability where I can actually take a large lump sum of cash. This seems too good to be true, and it might be.
What are some companies that are offering these buyouts?
Well, we've seen a variety of different companies over the last several years begin to offer these types of buyouts. I know, namely GM and Raytheon have been above those. Also, Parkview Hospital was one that offered one here recently. And we've also seen companies like Biomed and Zimmer. There's a lot of companies out there that are offering these types of things. And again, it just takes sitting down with a financial planner that can walk you through the pros and cons of taking that buyout or not taking that buyout. There's also other pension decisions people have to make if they're not getting a pension buyout, just making that decision between taking the joint and survivor benefit or taking the single life benefit or some type of period certain option along the way. And all these questions, all of these decisions that we have to make are vitally important, and they shouldn't be taken for granted.
So what's behind all this? Why are companies wanting to shell out so much cash now instead of over the years?
Well, when they originally made these pension projections, pensions started going away back in the 70s when we had the introduction of ERISA that introduced 401ks, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, and now we started to see less and less companies offer pensions. Well, when they actuarially built their projections of how much they were going to need to fund those plans with over time, they were using historical equity market returns and historical interest rates and also longevity, right? That people weren't living as long when they originally put together those projections. Now people are living longer and longer lives, which means they're going to have to make those payments for longer and longer periods of time. And now we have interest rates at all-time lows. And we also look what the stock market's done over the last 20 years. Those are not the double-digit returns that were factored into those projections. Many people did better making 4 or 5% in a fixed account over the last 15 to 20 years than they did in equities. And now they're factoring back in current equity returns, factoring back interest rate returns, factoring in people's longer and longer lives because of advancements in technology, medical technology, and they're going, we don't want to have this obligation on our balance sheet anymore.
So what are some of the things that I need to be thinking about when that letter lands in my mailbox telling me that a lump sum's possible?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is you have to identify what the purpose of those dollars are in the first place. And many times what we found is that you're getting these offers well before retirement. You haven't even started to think about what those dollars are actually going to be used for. And many times we forgot we even had a pension in the first place. And now we have this big pension decision to make. And sometimes it can be made hastily because many of these circumstances are giving you a short deadline to make that decision. I had a gentleman come in the other day that said, I've got to make this decision tomorrow. So I can't wait for us to get back together in a few weeks and for you to do all your analysis. I said, okay, well, let's skip all the other things and let's just really dive into your pension plan and figure out what the best decision is to make. And the first thing that we wanted to figure out is what's the purpose of the dollars? Do you need income in the first place? It turned out he had enough Social Security that he was not much of a spender, that he really didn't need guaranteed income for the rest of his life. He really didn't need that pension. He said, that's probably my emergency fund. I'm probably going to have a little fun with that along the way. He wanted to keep that liquid. Well, it's not going to be liquid if we leave it in the pension. So then we wanted to find out what the internal rate of return was. What's the actual effective rate of return that we're getting on those dollars over our lifetime? In other words, what do we need to take that lump sum and invest it into? What type of rate of return do we need on that lump sum in order to get that equivalent cash flow over our lifetime? Because there's a difference between cash flow and rate of return. We get those mixed up all the time. But if we had a 8% cash flow on $1 million, well, that means we're getting 80 grand a year. Well, if we pass away in 10 years, we never even got back our $1 million. So that was a negative rate of return, even though we had an 8% cash flow. Don't get those two things mixed up. But once we actually look at that, we very often see today that those cash flows are in that 4 to 6% range. One of our largest client bases is teachers and teachers' retirement funds. And one of the options that teachers have is to roll that ASA into their pension and then create a guaranteed income stream out of it. But those returns are so much lower than they used to be that it's much more beneficial to take that lump sum. We may only need to make 2-3% per year to match what that pension's going to do over your lifetime. You have to have someone that knows how to put together those numbers so that you can make that decision. I've seen too many people make the mistake of running into an advisor that says, hey, I can do it better than that. I can make you 10% a year. The market's returned 6 to 10% a year. We've met gentlemen and gals that have done this during the 2008 market correction, and it took them years to get back to even, and they never saw the rate of return that they were actually promised. They would have been way better off taking those payments out over time and just dollar cost averaging them into the S&P 500. They would have been fantastically better off than they are today. But they just took somebody's word for it and they never got a second opinion.
Well, I hope that that's something you won't do. Don't make that mistake. Do try to figure out exactly what your options are. And one way you can do that is to be one of the next 10 callers. To dial the number on your screen right now and set yourself up for a complimentary review of your your entire financial and retirement plan. You'll learn about taxes that you might be paying and how you could save money there, fees and expenses that are nibbling away at your investments, and then also, is there a way to create a lifetime income that's going to be there day after day, no matter how long you live? Those are all factors of the purpose-based retirement. That's why I hope you're one of the next 10 people to call the number on your screen, sit down with Casey or another member of the Howard Bailey team to find out about your own purpose-based retirement. All right, we are back with questions from viewers in just a second.
At Howard Bailey Financial, every dollar has a purpose. We call it the purpose-based retirement. A certified financial planner will help you decide what you need your retirement money to do for you. We put together a written plan that puts your dollars exactly where you want them to be. And we put every dollar to work to maximize your retirement efficiency. For a higher level of insight and care, choose the purpose-based retirement from Howard Bailey Financial. Call us now to set a complimentary consultation.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
And welcome back to the program. Each week we take questions from viewers and answer them here so that we're all keeping you up to date on the information, the questions that you have. So Casey, you ready for your first question?
I'm ready.
All right, let's get out to Bob in Claypool. Bob, go ahead.
Our insurance company is telling us we need between $150 and $250 daily benefit on our long-term care policy. So our question is, how do we know which one is best, or do we just take our agent's word for it?
Well, Bob, the reality is that you need to sit down and make sure this is part of a comprehensive plan. And unfortunately, the long-term care industry really started in such a way that it was just long-term care salesmen out on the road selling long-term care policies door to door. And that resulted in people having long-term care benefits sometimes larger than they really needed, or something that just didn't really align with their overall financial plan, because your agent, if they exclusively sell insurance, particularly long-term care insurance, they get paid more as you pay more and more in premium, and you pay more in premium when you have a larger benefit. And the numbers that you quoted there, $150 a day, $250 a day, we're talking about benefits that are between what, $4,500 and $7,500 a month. And Genworth just came out with their annual study. Genworth specializes in long-term care insurance, and in 2017 their survey found in the state of Indiana that for home health care, the average cost for home health care in the state of Indiana is about $3,800 a month. Now, skilled nursing care for a private room, that's on the other end of the spectrum, and that's about $7,800 a month. So let's say somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000 a month. So the price, the numbers you're quoted there, $150 a day, $250 a day, they fit right into what those averages are. But I'm here to tell you, I've sat down with people where we've created benefits as low as $100 a day, just because they said, we don't mind spending some of our own life savings in order to pay for that monthly benefit. And in some cases, I think you also have to keep in mind that if you need income today, maybe you're provided income from your investment, Social Security pension, that's $5,000 a month. Well, by the time you actually need the care, maybe those expenses have changed because you're now in a facility. You're not going out to eat. You're not playing golf. You're not going on vacation. You're not putting as much gas in the car. So some of that $5,000 a month can be used towards those actual long-term care expenses. And so the thing that has to be done is you have to sit down and take a look at all of your assets, your budget, your income, your expenses, and have that stress tested. One of the things that we do in our office is after we've started to formulate that financial plan, we're going to sit down and we can actually put you in a facility, with our software. And I want to emphasize with our software, because when you go into that software, we can say, well, how long could we potentially be in a facility? 2 years, 4 years, and then we start to stress test those things. What if we both go in the facility at the same time? What if we see an inflation rate of 6% or 7% or 3%? You have to really play with the numbers, dig into the numbers so that you can really understand why you're making the decision that you're making. Don't just take somebody's word for it. Get the facts, get the figures, make sure you understand the decision, and then ultimately make it for yourself.
Yeah, there are a tremendous number of variables you just outlined right there. So I can imagine the help of somebody who's done this many, many times, who has my best interests at heart, is really important.
Yeah, looking into all those different assets, I think it makes a lot of sense to not just look at long-term care in a bubble, because it shouldn't be. It's a big picture plan.
Let's move ahead now. We have an email question from Terry in Convoy, Ohio. Terry writes, I am 65 and my wife is 60. We're trying to decide between joint and survivor pension options and the single life pension. How do you know you're making the right decision? Boy, that is important.
Yeah, that is a difficult decision that we have to make between the joint and survivor, the single life pension. I think I might actually provide the same answer to the two of you as I gave to Bob here previously, and that is that we need to kill you. All right, now I say that facetiously, and what I mean is we also need to stress test it. So we need to take your overall financial plan, and then we need to say, well, what if we take the single life pension? And what if we pass away at 80? What if we pass away tomorrow at 62, 65, 70, whatever that age is, and how does that leave the spouse? Are we okay with the single life pension? How much are the expenses of the spouse actually going to go down? And in many circumstances, I can tell you from experience, the spouse will actually spend more dollars once they lose one of the two spouses, because now they actually are going out, they're doing other things that they maybe couldn't do previously, or now they're just staying more entertained, spending more time with their family, family, more time with their friends, and that sometimes means more in the way of expenses, especially when it comes to travel. And so, again, stress test this. And that's the first step, is to say, do we need the single life? Can we do without that joint and survivor pension? And then secondly, realize what you're getting with that joint and survivor pension. If you decide that, yes, you do need something to pass on to the surviving spouse, then what you need to do is figure out how much you're paying for the life insurance that you're getting through your pension company. We had a couple the other day that Marshall and I did some planning for, and they had an option of $4,000 a month for their single life pension, guaranteed $4,000 a month for the rest of a single life pension, and that was just for his life, or $2,000 a month for joint life. That was a huge decrease. That was a $2,000 a month, essentially, life insurance premium. And what that life insurance premium was paying for is it was paying for the benefit of $2,000 a month to continue on for the spouse's life at the death of the first. What we were able to do was take a portion of that $2,000 a month gap, take the single life pension, and actually use, let's say $1,500. We might have used $1,000 a month. It was actually a graded life insurance strategy where we went out, we bought private life insurance, and now he knows that his spouse is going to be okay if he ends up getting injured or if he ends up getting killed in some type of unfortunate circumstance. That income will be replaced by life insurance death benefits that will actually decrease over time, and his premium will decrease over time rather than with a pension being a flat premium for the rest of his life. So there's a lot to think about, and again, just doing your stress test, doing your real financial planning here, and not just taking a shot in the dark.
All right, we're going to move ahead quickly here to Marge in Roanoke. Marge, your question.
Why am I told I can't spend my principal during retirement? I saved it, so what's wrong with spending it?
Well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with going ahead and spending your hard-earned dollars. The thing is that most financial advisors are really doing planning and not focusing on the risks during that planning process. And that's why you end up building up these buffers. Maybe you don't have a plan for longevity. Maybe you don't have a plan to live till 90, 95, 100 years old. That's just one of those risks that we actually can control. But when we look at building a plan just based on investments using stocks and bonds, mutual funds, or ETFs, now you have to hope that you have enough because you don't know how long you're actually going to live. But if you had a guaranteed income stream that you couldn't outlive, then you could spend more of your principal knowing that you're never going to run out of money. Even if those accounts hit zero, because of that guaranteed income stream, it'll continue on for the rest of your life. What about long-term care needs? If we don't have a long-term care strategy, then well, how do we know how much we can actually spend? We always need to leave a large buffer there just in case. These are the reasons that we do financial planning the way that we do. This is what a purpose-based retirement's all about, looking at those liabilities and putting a plan together for each one of those so that you can spend your principal with confidence of knowing you're never going to run out of money. You're never going to be a burden on your family.
And the first step toward taking that path of comfort and confidence in your retirement is picking up the phone and being one of the next 10 people to call right now at the number on your screen. We're going to offer a complimentary review of your entire financial and retirement plan, a chance to learn more about your money and your future, because we want you to make the very best decisions going forward that you can. So for the next 10 people who call the number on the screen, Casey and the Howard Bailey team will make time on the calendar to visit with you and give you your very own purpose-based retirement. And our question of the day: what is the average age of retirement in America today? Casey has the answer when we come back.
Let me help you create the retirement you dream of. Go to my website and pick one of 3 education options to get started today. Get a copy of one of my retirement planning books, sign up for a purpose-based retirement live event, or go to the Purpose-Based Retirement University. 2 days of college-level retirement planning instruction. With the right education and proper coaching, I believe anyone can create the retirement they dream of. It all begins with one step. Visit thepurposebasedretirement.com.
You need a plan to create the retirement you deserve. The first step is to tune in to the Purpose-Based Retirement Radio Hour with Casey Weade and Marshall Johnson. Saturdays at 11 a.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. on WOWO 107.5 FM or Sunday mornings at 11 on 95.3 MNC.
Going into the break, we asked you our question of the day. It was, what is the average age at which Americans are retiring today? Casey?
Well, Lee, I get asked this question all the time. People want to know if they're above the curve, if they're behind the curve, if they're spot on, and they want to pick pick out these retirement ages. They often say, well, I'm going to retire at 67 because that's my full retirement age, or 65 because I qualify for Medicare, or age 70 because I receive my maximum Social Security benefit. The reality is we can't just pick an age. It's different for everyone. But hey, I know you still want to know the answer to the question of the day and figure out exactly where you're at. And the reality is, in the United States, in 2016, surveys show that the average retirement age in the United States across the states was age 63, and that's the same right here in the good old state of Indiana, the average retirement age being 63 right here. However, that does vary a little bit from state to state, varying from 63 to 65. If we go all the way down to the state of Florida, it's 63. If we look at the state of Texas, it's 64. But if we live up in New England, those poor guys aren't retiring until they're actually 65 years old. So it's a good thing we're right here in the state of Indiana, because we can retire maybe a little bit earlier. That's probably due a little bit in part due to cost of living here in the state of Indiana. Now, the reason we asked you that question is because what we're doing today is we're stress testing some financial media superstars, namely today's Susie Orman. And one of the things that she recently said was, she said that 70 is the new retirement age. And what we actually find is 70 is not the new retirement age. It's actually 63 across the United States. And we see this huge variance from state to state, 62, 63 to 65. We see something else trending at the same time. We are starting to see that the labor force participation rate in that higher demographic, age 65 and above, is actually skyrocketed over the last 17 years. Those individuals 65 and over, 56.5% increase over what we saw in the year 2000 all the way to today. 56% more in that population over age 65 are working than what we saw previously. And I think there's a lot that we can actually glean from this chart. Some very important information here, because we have to remember the markets are largely driven by demographics, and this is all about demographics. What we're finding is that baby boomers are now stepping into retirement. We have 10,000 baby boomers that are retiring every single day today, and many more of those individuals are actually staying into the labor force. So we have an aging labor force. More and more people will be stepping into retirement in the near future, and that would be great if we had people popping out a bunch of kids today so that we could continue to support that economy like the baby boomers did. However, what we can see from a participation rate only in that labor force is that group of age 16 to 24 is now participating 15% less today than they were just 17 years ago. And if we look at that demographic between ages 25 and all the way to ages 54, they have decreased their participation in the labor force somewhere between 2 and 4% over the last 15 to 20 years. And one of the things that we have to realize is that someday there's going to be 2 people retired for every 1 worker. And that's going to put some major strains on our economic system here in the United States. And this is another reason that you need to continue to save more and more dollars for your retirement, especially if you're young. Another thing that Susie Orman said is that healthcare costs continue to add up over time. I think she hit the nail on the head here, because today we found, Fidelity did a study here recently, finding the average retiree is going to need over $250,000 saved for retirement just to cover their health care costs. Unfortunately, today the average retiree has around $150,000 saved for retirement, meaning the average retiree will continue to have to work longer and longer, maybe working till age 70, and health care costs are obviously adding up. And we want to make sure that we stay on top of these things and we have an idea of what those costs might be before we actually get to that point. And a study found that the average retiree found that 20% of the average retiree found that their healthcare expenses were much higher than they actually expected. 27% somewhat higher, 39% about the same. People are finding that their healthcare expenses are the biggest surprise over and above what their other expenses are. This is why we want to plan for these things before you reach your retirement date. This is why if you're 2-3 years out, preferably 5 or 10 years out from retirement, it's time for you to start building a plan, including a healthcare strategy. Another thing that Susie Orman said was having a comfortable retirement is all about using compound interest. Well, let's stress test what Susie Orman has to say, because if we look at the markets, we look at how they move. They don't move in a straight line, and compound interest only moves and only works if we see the same linear return year after year, but we know that's not how the market works. It goes up and it goes down, and we have time periods like the lost decade plus two, from 2000 to 2012. Retirees, pre-retirees, many individuals took over 10 years to make up the losses that they experienced from 2000 to 2003 and 2008. If we factor in inflation, we see that it took the market 16 years to get back to even. Now, that's a period of time where you might find that compound interest just didn't help you out all that much. Another thing that Susie said was if a 25-year-old puts $100 into a Roth IRA each month, they could have $1 million by retirement. I think it's great here that Susie is encouraging our youth and younger individuals to save for retirement, and starting as early as possible is a fantastic thing, but I think we have to be careful about this, because now maybe some people think I only need to save $100 a month in order to actually get to retirement. In reality, we would need to return 11.25% every year investing from the age 25 till retirement in order to create $1 million in our retirement accounts. If we factor in inflation and actual returns of the market from 1977 through 2017, it wouldn't have turned into $1 million. It actually would have turned into $326,000, and that pre-retiree now trying to retire on $326,000 would not be able to due to inflation and due to the fluctuations of the market. Here are some things that we can take away from this. Number one, we can realize that we can either save more or we can work longer. Number two, we can implement a healthcare strategy early. Don't wait until it's too late and you may not be able to potentially cover all those potential healthcare costs you have during your retirement years. And I think most importantly here is understanding that downside protection is more important than that upside potential. While it's great hitting those home runs, it's much more important that we protect ourselves during the downside. Whether we're 25 years old and saving for retirement, or we're 65 and just stepping into retirement, we have to make sure that we have a real plan for our retirement years. And that means sitting down with a certified financial planner and analyzing all those different areas of your retirement life, all the major risks you're going to find during retirement. It's not about hitting a home run, finding the perfect investment. It's about analyzing those risks, and there's fourfold for every person we work with. Number one, liquidity for emergencies. Two, income to last a lifetime. Three, growth for inflation protection. And four, estate planning to take care of what's left over. And that also includes long-term care planning and tax planning as part of your estate plan, because if we don't do that, then Uncle Sam might end up eating up that estate that we plan to leave behind, or the nursing home for that matter. Taking care of those risks can give us a peace of mind to spend with confidence during retirement, and that's what you deserve.
Yeah, so clearly there's a lot to consider, and I think some professional advice is very important. So I hope you'll be one of the next 10 people to call the number on your screen for a complimentary financial and retirement review, taking a look at what is the tax burden you're currently paying, and could you see an improvement there? Fees and expenses you might be paying, could there be some savings for you there? And most importantly, how can you create a long-term lifetime income that you can't outlive? All things to be considered as you take a look at your retirement plan. So be one of the next 10 people to call the number on your screen to sit down with Casey and the Howard Bailey team and get your very own purpose-based retirement. That's all the time we have. We'll see you next week.